Nations League tournament.
And we are back with the representative of Latin America and the Caribbean of UNICEF, Ms. Jean Gough. Welcome, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's so nice to have you on your studio this morning and on our show this morning.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was privileged enough to be able to co-host an event held by UNICEF at the St. Catherine's Gymnasium, and it's so nice to be able to engage a bit more in discussion with you this morning.
Thank you so much for having me here, both of you.
Thank you.
So I want to start off by setting a backdrop, so to speak. The global community has been experiencing massive devastation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we are seeing that more and more there are families being affected, there are children being affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, physically, psychologically, mentally, and certainly economically. And livelihoods have changed. A lot of families have lost breadwinners, families have lost jobs, and so the most vulnerable of them all have been affected, and those are our children. What is the single most outstanding area or priority of UNICEF at this point in time across Latin America and the Caribbean after the COVID-19 pandemic, considering all these factors?
Good morning to all the population of Belize that's watching this program this morning, all the young people and all the families.
Yes.
And thanks for having me here. There is, from my perspective, I think children was the most affected.
Right.
They have not been affected maybe with the disease itself, because young people have a very strong immune system.
Right.
Yes.
That has been built and it gets deteriorated over the years. So their immune system has been strong to resist, and we have few cases when the child has some chronic disease that comes in. But they have been affected because they have been robbed of their classrooms.
Right.
They have been robbed of their parks. They have been locked in rooms, in houses, and sometimes in houses with people that may not treat them as nice as they will need to be. And I think when you see things, this emotional stress on young people, that children need to socialize. So if you will look at one single thing that I think is an education crisis in the region.
Right.
Because we, those 2 years, this region, Latin America and the Caribbean, has been the region that have had more days without class and presence.
Yeah.
You know, going to the classroom, seeing their teachers, socializing with their friends. And this is something that, that cannot be recovered, especially for the smaller. You will never be a 4-year-old child again in your life. And you cannot get those skills that is only shown when you're 4 years. So I think that when you look at that cohort group, the smaller kids, we are seeing a lot of impact in their well-being because their socialization has not been as strong as it could be. And the most vulnerable are the ones that was more impacted. We know governments across the region, including here in Belize, did their efforts to keep online learning. They have also produced television programs, radio programs, they have made booklets and sent to these kids. But sometimes those families of the most vulnerable doesn't have the education to help their kids.
Right.
Some of them cannot read the booklet that has been shown. Some of them does not have the time to engage with their children. So we look at one single thing, I think, is education, getting them to learn and being able to catch up. And I have gone to schools here in Belize, and we have seen the impact on those most vulnerable. We are some migrant children, and they're learning English. That's not their first language. So those kids are really falling behind.
Right.
And we are calling, we had a Minister of Education meeting 1 week, last week when I was in Argentina, the week before. And there we all declared that education needs to be treated as an emergency, and all efforts should be done to make sure that we recover and those learning losses. That is not easy. And then make sure that the ones that did not come back, This is a teenage group now
Right.
that stayed somewhere, going back to work. How do we go and find them and bring them back to the classroom?
Right.
And the mental health that all of this has on
Yes.
people, even families, as you said in your opening remarks, they have lost their jobs.
Right.
When you lose your jobs, of course, you don't know where the food that you will put on the table the next
Yes.
day will come from.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that creates stress on yourself. And sometimes your behavior is not the best for the kids
Yeah.
because you are worried for their well-being
Right.
as well as the well-being of the family. So those consequences of not being able to socialize, those consequences of the health of the epidemic on young people, I think we can't put a figure economic value to
Right.
it, because those economic values that is will be measured
Yeah.
next 10 years, because they will not have the skills that they need for the economic development of the country.
So based on your observation, and you've been visiting different countries in the region to acquire that data, what are the steps that UNICEF are willing to take to tackle these mental issues, these education issues? Particularly, I really appreciate that you talked about the migrant children, but particularly those children in the rural communities that don't have access to basic electricity and water. How are you able to get to them and to talk to them about the things that UNICEF are willing to offer?
We work with partners. UNICEF does not implement directly. We are advocating with government because we want to reach each child. And if we do it alone, we could only reach 10 children. We want to reach
Everybody.
the full.
Right.
And that requires that we work in partnership. And we need to advocate with the government to make sure that their staff and their strategies include these most vulnerable children and focus on them. And in the different countries, we have been partnered with civil society organizations as well, research organizations to measure what's happening. So we have more data to be able to say, government, this is the investment that we need to do, and this is how we have to do it. And I think those then will allow us to do it, to make sure. As I said yesterday, I think mental health was not on the radar of many of us, and that includes UNICEF, because of course we were focusing on survival. We wanted kids to survive, and I think then your priorities keeps changing.
Yeah.
But I think the pandemic brought out all of these vulnerabilities that was there before, but they were not so visible because they were hidden under other problems that the world has. And I think this is where we, and UNICEF is trying to make sure that we have the knowledge on mental health. What are the best interventions to reach kids? And yesterday we were very grateful for kids. We had a good discussion with the young people here in Belize, and they were calling for counselors in school. And this is a intervention that we have been advocating for across. And of course, when you have teachers, when you have gaps in teachers in classroom, sometimes we are not pushing enough to get the counselors. But the young people are really asking for more resources for mental health, financial and human resources. And they're also asking for a hotline to make sure that they have then a place to call. Because we are seeing an increase in suicide. Suicide rate in the region, there are certain countries that it's increasing and the age is being reduced. So that means we really need to have a location, a number where someone could call and knows that his information is confidential. And knows that he has access because he needs an encouragement word in that 1 second. And that 1 second makes a difference between life and death. And so I think this is something that we are doing more in making sure that governments invest more in this piece, in making sure that early on, how do we make that people has all those skills, and the teachers also being able to detect when a child maybe does not have the family environment that allows him to grow his physical well-being and his mental well-being.
I have a little brother at home, and he says it was so hard to make friends. before the pandemic, when you're a kid, you know, you're in that awkward state, it's hard to make friends. And then the pandemic came, and then of course, you can't socialize and make friends. And kids, I've noticed that they respond to certain situations in a very different way. Either they express it through anger, through sadness, through bullying other children, and so forth. When you talk about training the teachers, how is it that you think that we can go about providing them that counsel training for most teachers?
You know, we need to come up, and I think we have been working across the region and identifying a module. We do these, we do the multi-indicator cluster survey, and we're coming up with a module to detect these types of, when a young person or a child has some mental health issues. And then teachers, you know, I believe that all teachers needs to have these skills. So the best place to do it is in universities, making sure that the course is there. So you need to have an emergency approach and trying to get some information out to teachers. But looking at the long term, I think we need to train more counselors. We need to make teachers are equipped with at least the basic information, and they could do it through their normal training. And I think here is something that we should all do across, and I think all of young people will become parents. They need the skills as well. So I think we really need to put in more skills in our different university programs, college programs, and in high school, and making sure, because we also have very young girls that are pregnant, that have babies very young, and they need to be equipped, and they need to have a mental health preparedness to go through these things. I have seen a very increase in early pregnancy in young girls in the region that has been worrying me. I find that a young 15-year-old girl with a baby, she's a girl herself. And then your future is really not there, and they don't have the support in the family to help them go through all of this trauma. So how do we make sure that we start early on and really giving these life skills to the young people? So this is a program that we are working here in Belize, trying to get skills early on in secondary education to make sure that you keep learning as you go through the life, and then we all become better citizens.
Right. One of the things that popped up in my mind just now is social protection, social protection, social protection. Speak to us a bit about how we can go about as a community to ensure that our governments are investing in these social protection mechanisms.
You know, we in Belize, I think social protection is an area that we've been working across the region and making sure that government has a more integrated approach to social protection. What you see, they have lots of programs of different magnitude, and sometimes you could count 20 of these programs. And so these programs leads a lot of duplication, not ability, lots of maybe resources are spent, but the efficiencies of those programs are not the best. So we are working with governments to have a better integrated approach. And here in Belize, we have a paper in cabinet to look at the social protection programs that the Belize has in the country and try to make them more efficient. And we are calling it a social protection floor. We had a discussion with the Prime Minister around that, and we said, he says to me, Jean, I believe that the best social protection is ensuring that everyone has a job. That's also a social protection mechanism. So I think if we are able to have each citizen to have a job, then that's great, but normally it doesn't happen. So we need to make sure that the ones that fall through the crack has a safety net that grabs them, so they really are able to succeed. So the social protection schemes are I call them safety net programs. So if you fall in, something they grab you and take you out and make sure that there is this government program that will allow you to continue your development to the best of your potential and the best of your abilities.
We're talking about mental health and education and so forth, and that kind of brings up the questions about the kids in the more vulnerable states, talking about kids that are, living in poverty and kids that are affected by crime. Is the program seeking to focus more on them, and how is it going to be different from your other strategies?
Children, these vulnerable kids, or sometimes they do things that may be not even vulnerable. There are other kids that does things that maybe is not accepted or not within the normal social norms available in society. Right. And I have met some of these kids, and I was very pleased here in Belize that they have a diversion program, because when a young person, maybe his age is in maturity, you commit, let's say, speeding. Yes. That is an offense to the law. Right. And these kids, we have a program that we call it a diversion program. Instead of them going to the justice system, that they will have a record, a criminal record, we put them through a community service program that they learn by example, that they learn that this is something I shouldn't do. And that child is protected because his name will not show up in his records for the future. And I was very pleased to see this program. My request to the government is that that is only working in 2 districts. I want it to be in the full country, because I think the more we protect kids, because we all make offenses that maybe are not the best judgment, because at that age you don't have the judgment sometimes to make it. Right. And so we met a boy that he was on a bicycle speeding. He didn't have license, didn't have insurance, didn't have anything, and he was caught. Yeah. And so he said that he was very grateful for the program, because the protection officer, instead of sending him to the court and the police, they sent him to the diversion program, and he did social service. And he says now he's promoting it among the young people, that they shouldn't be driving without license, they shouldn't be doing young people likes to take risk. And so they'll need to learn through another programs that maybe is better for them. So I'm very pleased to see it, but it needs to be expanded to the full country to make sure that all kids that make a poor judgment is not penalized through the legal system, because of course the justice system makes your record. When you become 21 looking for a job, you will show up. So we want to protect kids and making sure that each one has an opportunity to correct behaviors that may be not in line. And generally the most vulnerable are the ones that does more of these offenses than the ones that are better protected, because maybe they have better opportunities of getting them under that request.
I do understand that you've been touring the country a bit, and you've had the opportunity to visit one of the police stations to see one of the safe spaces for children who may be involved in some type of unfortunate situation, and providing that safe space is important. Speak to us about what you experienced on that visit.
I did. I went to San Ignacio, and in San Ignacio we met the police commissioner. We also met Justice Moore, and she is part of the committee that we have on child protection in the country, and I think a very committed person with the children in this country. She's also a teacher, so she's also trained in the new lawyers to make sure that they are prepared in the justice, and I call it juvenile justice for children. And there we were able to see that when a kid does something that is not, they have a space that they bring them forward, especially for violence. Because when you have when someone commits something against you, and you're a young person, you don't want to speak to another one. A policeman in a uniform is not a person that you want to go and say, this person is abusing me, this person is doing me. So these safe spaces is a location where the police person is not in uniform. She is in a regular dress, and you have men and women, because of course not all will open up. So if you have a boy and you have a woman, may not open up. So you need to make sure that we look at the gender and having support for both. And there they do the interview process, and there that's recorded, so the child does not need to go back and say, it's very traumatic for a young person to tell his story. And then the child is victimized twice
Yes.
because they go to the police station, they have to do it. Then they go to the justice system, they have to do it again.
Right.
So we are trying to advocate that this is recorded, it's safe, and the parents are not in the same room, but they are watching. It has cameras where the guardian of the child is sitting there, but not in the same room because the children doesn't open up. And and so they have the video types of conference, and they could record it. And again, we want to make sure that these safe spaces are available to all children in the country. So we are still working to take this. I think we have 6 of these locations, and we need to make sure that we have more in each district has. I was very impressed with the police wanting to do more of these programs because it says it helps them in their duties in being able to serve those communities with the best of their ability. So I'm very pleased to see the program. I was very pleased to meet the members of the committee. And Justice Moore, she was she is one of those ladies that has been working for young people in this country.
Yes, that's Justice Moore.
With all her heart and soul.
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of stay on the theme of safe spaces and talk a little bit about the back to normalcy in the schools this coming. In Belize, I know that around the world, other kids have already gone back to school in a level of normalcy, but Belize, we're still doing the one day, September, they're supposed to go back fully. I am a teacher and I also have a brother at home. I wanted to kind of see how we can address the topic of keeping safe in the classroom. You know, in Belize, public and private, well, maybe not private, but most public schools have at least 25 to 30 kids per classroom. And those classroom spaces are not big. How do you think we can help in preventing more of these COVID cases coming up in our children while we go back to school? Yes, the vaccination is here, but some parents are concerned. Some parents are not letting their kids take the vaccine. So how do we address going back to this level of 5 days a week while, not repeating the actions before the pandemic?
We have been working on this because UNICEF has been one of the advocates for going back to school. I was kind of surprised. I thought in Belize they were going every day because in the region, the majority of the countries, all children are going every day to school. So when I went to the classroom, I was kind of puzzled because if I knew that I would have pushed more, the full, and I realized it's the end of the semester. So it was September, they told me, Jane, we're going back full time. And we have been keeping records, even those that has gone back full time with 40 children in the classroom, there have not been COVID, epidemics coming out of them. So this is why I said the immune systems of young people are good. We should be careful when a child has comorbidities because then they're more vulnerable. But a normal child generally has enough immune system. And I think we believe that the going to school is better than the risk of not going to school. So I think the risk that you take, the benefits are much, much more. So keeping back is not good for the kid. So, and we have seen that you don't see even where, Uruguay, it was a country in this region that really was the country that closed schools less.
Wow.
And they went back since 2020. And they never had an outbreak of COVID in their classrooms. The teachers are vaccinated because, of course, the teachers, if they're more senior, and what you see in the region, that the teachers they're more on the older side, on the younger side, on Belize, and so you need to make sure that they are protected, that they get the vaccines. And I've been advocating in Belize because we have vaccines.
Yes.
That everyone should get vaccinated, get your booster, and make sure. So I'm out there advocating, and I learned that they have vaccines for 5 to 11.
Yes.
And so that will also help to make sure that we go back. And I want to invite the families to don't be afraid. We have been vaccinating kids over the years, and vaccinations are safe, and they're better options for kids. It's better to be vaccinated. We haven't seen no side effects. that are, this is a global thing that's happening around the world. There's a lot of data. And they have shown that the side effects on kids is also not to the risk that we want to be afraid. So I want to encourage the parents that the benefits of being in school is much higher than the risk of not going. So
I want to.
Go ahead.
I wanted to do a segue because the time is running out, but I can't let you leave without answering this one particular question, because you are a civil engineer, right? And I would imagine that, you know, overseeing infrastructure and projects would be something that you would want to push a little bit more under UNICEF. And so I was wondering if there are any works or conversations about projects for risk and disaster management through UNICEF for rural communities.
You know, well, risk reduction is part of our work in looking at climate change and understanding that we understand what's the risk that we face in different areas, and then mitigating either through infrastructure or preparedness, and families to be ready. If you don't have the infrastructure to protect, then what do you do in case of, because Belize's lands are low, flooding is common, and I see a lot of homes may be exposed. And what we have learned also, that people likes to stay in the location. So if they're not moving their home, then let's try to mitigate it by preparedness, making sure that families knows what to do when these types. So this is something that the office is doing here in Belize. And we are also looking at infrastructure that will, large scale infrastructure that needs to be done, that we advocate with donors to protect. So there is technology around the world. We are also looking, what we saw in some schools, we need to get more water and safe water in school, and this is something that we advocate and promote, because we know that hand washing for COVID, it needs to be there. So we need to make sure that they have toilets that are functioning. So those types of infrastructure is something that we promote across UNICEF, and we have large water systems that we built around the world in countries that need it. Right now in Haiti, we are doing the big water schemes because their coverage is lower than other countries. So I think we always are looking, because water is something that the coverage keeps going down, because infrastructure is old and needs to be renovated and be updated. So we cannot ever say that we are there 100%. We always have to go back. And so encourage the government to keep renovating, making sure that we use new technology to save water, because the water is a finite resource.
You know, we are battling the effects of climate change. We are battling the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, and there's also an ongoing war. And that has impacted the global community's economies severely. What has the partnership been like with other global donors to ensure that in this globally financially strenuous time, there are not redundancies in terms of where funding is being allocated for projects?
You know, this is the 3 C's, as we call it, the climate, the conflict, and the pandemic. So I think that's, we didn't expect the war to come in the middle of a pandemic, so now we are dealing with this, and given that the food prices is going up. So we will be looking at other nutrition effects of this, and we are also seeing that availability of resources, because the economic crisis that we are also seeing, because the economies were closed for some time. So the recovery from the pandemic is not there. We are seeing a decrease in the GDP growth in the region. And I think now with the food prices due to the war and whatever is happening globally, they will have consequences. And I think this is something that we need to be prepared for in 2023 and really be more effective and efficient in the use of our resources, because this is what we are seeing, no? And I think we keep advocating that the resources, and one of the things that we are looking at, many of our countries are high debt. In the repayment of this, how do we advocate that those repayment come back to the country, especially for education? And so this is something that we have. The Secretary General has called for a summit on education that is happening in September. In that summit, the region will be presented, and we are hoping that the presidents and prime minister from the region really position the region to make sure that we have the resources to really come up with this education learning crisis that we have in the region. So the summit is a great opportunity for the region to put forward globally what are the needs and what are those programs that we need to do across the region. So I know in Belize we are doing some consultations, we are doing it across. End of June is the pre-summit that will happen in Paris, and then we have the summit in September. So education will be high in the UN's agenda, and we wanted to end by inviting the families to keep investing in education, believe in education, early education, start early, the best investment any government could do.
Couldn't have ended it better in any way. You know, we're completely out of time, but are there any final words that you would like for our viewers to know?
I will just make sure that your children are in holidays. I'm also worried because the break will come.
Yes.
And make them do some reading. make them catch up. Because they really need to catch up. And make sure that in September we go to school every day, and that we do a recovery program that is good for kids. Invite the families to go for vaccination. Let's reach the target that we need. Everyone in the country vaccinated. That's the only way we will get out of this pandemic, and we need to get out together. So invite you all to go back and get vaccinated. The vaccine for young people is in the town, in the country. Make sure that they go. I heard last night that the families that's in a room of 100, just 25% are getting vaccinated. So I want to encourage the family, don't be afraid. This is happening globally. We have not seen no negative impact in the health of kids. Be confident. The international community is doing all the research speed to make sure that we get out of this pandemic and we get out of it. So encourage all families to go for vaccine. Thank you.
Director, you're a very busy lady.
Yes.
And we really appreciate you taking the time this morning to join us in this course.
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity to share views from UNICEF, and we are very happy to be in Belize. I have done all the Caribbean countries, so I'm very happy.
Good. Yes.
Thank you so much, and thanks for the viewers for this opportunity to share views.
Thank you. And we need to take a break, but when we come back, we'll be joined by representatives from the Carnival Mass Bands and the Carnival board team. So stay with us because Carnival is back.